Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of News to the Science. Today we're going to be talking about the specs of both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox. Well, at least what we know so far. So we're going to be comparing the two. So go ahead and take a seat and sit back and enjoy. So, bringing you this article from the Business Insider website, I have an article talking about both specs of the PlayStation 5 and the upcoming Xbox X Series. And it says here, so we're finally getting more details about the next Xbox and PlayStation consoles, but it's already clear that they'll offer mostly identical performances. So Microsoft just revealed on Thursday evening a bunch of new details, including what it'll look like. And now we know what the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 will be capable of, too, thanks to getting a fuller picture of what kind of specs both game machines will be running. When you realize how similar the specs are for both consoles, it's easy to see why both companies are making identical claims about their performances. Both the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 make big, nearly identical promises to play games up to 120 frames per second at 4K resolution, even play games up to 8K resolution. The games are also including ray tracing, both because they are running on powerful modern specs. Now, I gotta say this. The whole 4K playing capabilities, I do believe it so to be true. But going above at least to 8K or at least above 4K, maybe 5 to 6K, I can think that it's very plausible. But going up to 8K, I highly doubt that we're just right there. I mean, 8K TVs are being sold in the market right now as we speak, but they're really expensive at this time. So we're just not ready for 8K yet. But I would say a mid-generation refresh for these consoles in the future would be a lot better and highly capable of performing 8K gameplay. So I think at best it'd probably be checkerboard 8K resolution, at least checkerboard or simulated 8K resolution gaming that we're going to be getting, but I highly doubt that we're going to be playing full 8K resolution. So besides, 8K is exactly still at its infancy. Not many people own 8K televisions yet. 4K has already started to become the standard because HD is already the standard, so I guess we'll see where we go from there. Until then, let's continue with the article. Both the Microsoft Xbox Series and the Sony PlayStation 5 will run on chips that will support ray tracing. I kind of mentioned that in one of my older videos, that ray tracing is a really big deal, as well as games up to 8K resolution according to both companies. In a nutshell, ray tracing is a technology that makes in-game lighting more realistic, which makes a bigger impact than you might think, and improves the overall look of the game. Microsoft and Sony also both said their consoles will offer 120 frames per second at 4K resolution. Now that is a really big deal, 120 frames per second on 4K. You can't even say that cameras do that these days. I mean, not a lot of cameras do that these days. At least few cameras do 60 frames per second with 4K. But for instance, mine only goes up to like 4K at 30 FPS. But it's a really big deal that to be getting that resolution and that many FPS at 4K resolution. You can tell already just by the sound of these specs on paper that these consoles will be powerful and a big deal. So continuing on, a custom AMD processor based on AMD's Ryzen Zen 2 generation. This is the confirmed Xbox X Series chips specs, by the way. And a custom graphics chip based on the AMD's latest RDNA generation, also known as Navi, with GDDR6 graphics. The confirmed PlayStation 5 chip spec so far is a custom 8-core AMD processor based on AMD Ryzen Zen 2 generation, and a custom graphics chip based on AMD's latest RDNA generation, also known as Navi. Interestingly, these specs are recognizable, even comparable to specs that today's PC gamers would put in their powerful gaming PCs. Previous consoles typically use chips that are designed for low-power computers. It's actually amazing how good games look on previous consoles, considering that they're typically underpowered. Chips are really basically just very antiquated. I mean, they're seriously underpowered, but games still look pretty good on the PS4 Pro and the Xbox X Series, or Xbox One X, excuse me. God, again with the naming schemes. These names are terrible. Anyways, continuing on. Apart from the better graphics and smoother gameplay, the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 will finally feel faster because they're using modern storage drives instead of the old-fashioned ones in the current consoles. Now, for the most part, up until this point, the consoles have been using hard drives, and that's no longer the case. The future is SSDs, and we have an SSD picture similar to what I have in my computer. I do have Samsung Evo's SSDs in my computer, and it's not exactly going to be this SSD drive, but it's going to be very similar and close to it. So here's a picture of the 970 Evo NVMe 1 terabyte SSD. And moving forward, SSDs are going to be the main thing. And I got to say that with the way that these games are being made and the quality of these games that are being delivered to our games, I'm pretty sure the games are going to take up a lot of capacity in our consoles. So at least release the consoles at 2 terabytes, no much less than that, because these games are going to take up like hundreds of gigabytes. They're going to be huge. They're going to be at 4K resolution. Remember that. It takes up a lot of space, and you got to release the consoles at least 2 terabytes. 1 terabyte I can be okay with, and I'll just get an extended hard drive, just to add more games to it. But I at least released a new 2 terabyte addition to the consoles, so the consumers have their choice in picking their consoles when it comes to launch. Moving on with the article, again, both the Xbox X Series and the PlayStation 5 will also have SSD storage drives. That means faster performances while you'll be navigating around menus in online game stores and opening apps. Most importantly, it means games will load significantly faster. Specifically, Microsoft confirmed that to GameSpot that it's using certain type of SSD called NVMe that's magnitudes faster than the standard old-fashioned hard drives in the Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro. In fact, NVMe SSDs are faster than regular SSDs too. For now, we don't know exactly what type of SSD Sony's will be using in PlayStation 5 other than its custom design. So previous consoles ran surprisingly underpowered chips, but the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 are running chips that PC gamers use in their modern, powerful gaming PCs. Chips from companies like AMD are nothing new for consoles, except console chips were rarely, if ever, used in actual computers. And if they were in actual computers, they'd usually be found in low-powered budget models. It's amazing how Microsoft, Sony, and game developers could squeeze so much performance out of traditionally low-powered console chips. Conversely, AMD's Ryzen Zen 2 processor and the Navi graphics chips in the Series X and PlayStation 5 are actually recognizable, even comparable chips that people put in their gaming PCs today. To be perfectly accurate, Microsoft and Sony are still using custom versions of these chips. Still, they're based on the same old technologies, generations, and architectures that today's powerful gaming PCs are running on. With that in mind, game developers have a lot more to work with, which helps explain how Microsoft and Sony are confident enough to make their claims. Now, going back to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One era, and that was like about, oh my god, I want to say almost 7 years ago. Back in 2013, these consoles were announced and they debuted to consumers. Surprisingly enough, we thought that we've already reached that leap. We were going to go beyond the leap from the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. But as it turns out, they were both disappointing as far as like the specs goes on the PS4 and the Xbox One. Their specs were like really significantly underpowered, and they weren't delivering much power as we anticipated. So 2013 was a kind of special kind of year in that era where I remember from personal memory that computers they were already shifting over to SSD. It was starting to become commonplace, but quite not readily available to your general consumers. Now that the time has passed and it's been years since SSD had made into the market and it's become more commonplace, it's actually a little bit more affordable now. I mean, SSDs will always be more expensive than hard drives. I mean, let's be real. But it seems that Sony and Microsoft weren't really prepared to release consoles with SSD because, one, it's really expensive to produce SSDs, and two, the general consumers weren't really available or ready for SSD based consoles. We were probably anticipating at the time because SSD were becoming commonplace in computers and phones and everything like that. I mean, phones really ran on SSDs as always, but significantly less capacity. Nowadays, phones have like up to like a terabyte or even 750 plus gigabytes of SSD storage in their phones and tablets and whatnot. But again, that comes around back to what I was talking about, how SSD have become really commonplace compared to what it was 6 to 7 years ago. And I think now is the right time, and there's no exception, no excuse whatsoever to not release a console with an SSD built in, at minimum 2 terabytes, because these games are going to be significantly larger than the previous console generation games. So with that in mind, I just want to say that I'm really happy for both Microsoft and Sony. We're going to have two competing consoles with overall like a similar performance on both consoles. And I like that because I want to be able to like balance it, and I want to be able to juggle between apples and oranges, if you get my drift. And I really want to I want to be placed as a consumer in that position where I don't know which one to pick. But initially, I think I'm going to pick the PS5 to start because I really want the Xbox X series, given how like the nature and like the specifications from Microsoft. It really has interested me a lot, and I'm definitely excited for it because I haven't had an Xbox since the 360 era, and basically I've been a PlayStation guy for my entire life. I've only owned PlayStation and Nintendo consoles. I had a Sega and a Sega Dreamcast back in the day, but that was a long time ago. But we're in an era where both, the top dogs, both competing consoles, both companies, are really keeping an eye on each other, and they're trying to come out on top. PlayStation this generation just came out on top with selling more consoles than the Xbox ever did in its lifetime, but we're going to see how they're going to be selling, how they're going to be selling their next generation of consoles coming up, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be very close to, they're both going to be very close in terms of sales and spec-wise and whatnot. So it's a very exciting time to be a gamer. I'm pretty excited, and PC gamers, I think these consoles that are coming up are going to give you a run for your money if you're already playing PC. But other than that, guys, that's all I got for you for PlayStation news and Xbox news. Stay tuned for more gaming news, and please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click on bell notifications so y'all don't miss anything. And as always, I will see you all in the next video.